We're becoming multicultural. Everywhere is becoming multicultural. Even Japan, there was a half Ukrainian Miss Japan last year. Briefly for a time.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. What do you think about that,
Anything can happen, really. Do you want to talk about that, Yuta?
Not really.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Two Asian Blokes podcast, a podcast where we talk about Asian pop culture, films, TV shows, comic books, anime, music, food, video games, whatever we're feeling at the time, really. My name is Dan with a H. With me, as always, is my co-host, Tavi. Hello, Tavi.
Hey, Dan. We're talking about a very special topic today.
The Oscars wrapped up for the
year. The most famous topic.
Yeah,
the Oscars. The most famous... the thing that everyone watches, which is the Oscars. It's
the
not
most important
in ratings.
time of the year. So we got Oppenheimer, Robert Downey Jr., Emma Stone. Who cares? We are here today to talk about two massive wins coming out of Japan, right, Tavi?
Yeah, we want to talk about the Japanese films that won. And to do that, we've got another guest back on. He's been on before. And we want to welcome back Yuta on the show.
Hi, Yuta.
Hi. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, thanks for coming back on. I'm glad that you liked talking to us last time and that you actually wanted to come on. Most people don't.
Yeah. Yuta was on our episode where we reviewed Suzume, the Makoto Shinkai film. But yeah, he's coming in from Japan this time, live from Japan. Thank you for joining us, Yuta.
Thank you for the invitation.
No worries. We really wanted to talk about these films with you even before the Oscars gave them the wins. So today we're talking about Godzilla Minus One, which recently won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects, beating out movies like Mission Impossible, Guardians of the Galaxy, and The Creator. But we're also going to talk about The Boy and the Heron, which won Best Animated, beating out Spider-Verse and Elemental and others. So two big films.
Yeah, but I mean, before we get into that, the Oscars are obviously an American award. Is it a thing that is followed in Japan at all? Amongst maybe people that like films in Japan? I mean, do you follow the Oscars at all, Yuta?
Yeah, sure. As a fan of films, I follow Oscar every year, and I think it's more famous than Japanese Academy Awards.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
Very interesting. I want to ask you about the Film Academy a bit more later, but did you see many of the Best Picture nominated films at all?
Actually, not so many, but I watched The Poor Things, which I thought very good, and I want to watch Oppenheimer as early as possible, but it's not it's not released in Japan yet. It's gonna be released so soon.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw an article mentioning that there will be a release of Oppenheimer in Japan soon. And I'm assuming people will be like, oh, gee, I wonder what a Japanese person thinks about Oppenheimer, because there is an obvious controversial topic about that film. But what is your opinion about the film Oppenheimer as an idea, as a Japanese person?
Well, that's a difficult question since I haven't watched the film yet. But I think.
I mean, you are keen to watch it, though, right?
Yeah,
You want
personally,
to watch it.
I'm so keen to watch it because it's like always interesting, and it's also good to know what American people, American film creators thinks and depicts about the nuclear power kind of things. of course, it's controversial, but it's like good to know many people's perspectives.
Do you think, because you are into film and you're a pretty like open person. You've mentioned you've lived overseas for a period of time in your life. But how would you say the reception would be amongst like just the general public of Japanese people?
Are people like even talking about Oppenheimer in Japan? Because it was pretty big in the West because of Barbie and Oppenheimer coming out at the same time. Did that meme reach Japan?
Yeah, I think people are like pretty much talking about the film because it's so late. The release of the movie is so late in Japan compared to other countries, and people are like thinking, is there any politics behind it or something like that?
Yeah, okay. Do you think there are politics
Yeah.
behind it?
Not sure.
Yeah, sure. Because we've lived in Japan, and sometimes movies just come late to Japan.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, I remember living in Japan, and there were some movies I wanted to see, and it's like, oh, this is not coming out for like 4 or 5 months after its release. I remember me and Dan, when we were living there, we wanted to watch John Wick 2. We managed to find another way to watch it before it even got to Japan. But yeah, some films come early. I remember Blade Runner 2049. That had a pretty quick release in Japan, and It as well. The first horror movie, the first Stephen King's It, came out quite quickly.
And Marvel movies
So
as well
I guess it
tend
depends.
to come out pretty early.
Yeah, Marvel movies just come out,
schedule.
But like no one gives a fuck about Marvel movies.
Yeah, but I
Not
mean,
anyone on this
I mean,
podcast anyway.
it could be politics, like lagging the release of
Yeah.
of Oppenheimer. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if that was the case because of the sensitive topic. But that said, like the two films we're going to be talking about today have, they are both set during World War II. So definitely different depictions of that era. But
Yeah.
good year for World War II films, I would say. In
Yeah,
general.
good year for like post World War II films. You could say that Oppenheimer and Godzilla Minus One have a shared universe. So maybe. I wanted to ask you quickly, Yuta, about the because you said even just then the Japanese Academy is not as popular in Japan. Why is that? Why do you think people pay attention more to the American one?
Well, I'm not sure really, but like one reason is that Japanese Academy Awards has been kind of criticized because its tendency to prioritize like big budget movies with famous actors, actress.
Okay.
Not like the Oscars at all.
Because I'm having a look at the winners of the Japanese Academy, and Godzilla Minus One has won most of them.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of films that I wanted to ask you about. Oh, well, one in particular. So there's a film called Perfect Days. Do you know this movie?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
But I haven't watched it.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
not yet.
So to me, this was like my personal favorite film of last year. I really liked this movie, and it won a lot of awards at the Japanese. It won best director for Wim Wenders. Koji Yakusho won best actor. It's interesting to see because Perfect Days was nominated for the best, I think, international in the Academy Awards, but it was the only Japanese film that didn't win its category compared to Godzilla and The Boy and the Heron. But I wonder, like, what is the reception to... It's basically a German production that made Perfect Days. What do you think of that winning the best director? He's a German director, yeah. Is that unusual?
I think it's unusual that like foreign directors or foreign productions create a movie completely in Japan. So it's yeah, that is what is like rare. I think rare, rather than like foreign directors winning the Japanese Academy Awards.
Yeah, because there's some like criticism to the Oscar ever since Parasite won 5 years ago. That is a 100% Korean production, but it's won a category for American films. So, I mean, for me, I thought it deserved the win that year. But there's kind of the argument that academies should only be for American films. But the argument goes, what about British movies? I mean, what about Australian movies? They're not American. So, yeah, but that's a totally different
We're
argument.
becoming multicultural. Everywhere is becoming multicultural. Even Japan. Imagine if, there was a half Ukrainian Miss Japan last year. Briefly for a
Oh,
time.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Anything can happen, really. Do you want to talk about that, Yuta?
Not really.
Yeah, that's fair.
Fair enough.
We're getting off topic
enough.
here.
That's too
I
controversial.
mean, let's just get straight into. I mean, since we're on the topic of Godzilla Minus One, I mean, do you want to give a quick synopsis, Dan?
Okay.
Or do you want me to give the synopsis? I can give the synopsis.
I can do it,
so-
Tavi. No, I want to do it. I'm going to do it.
Okay, you do it then.
All right,
Good.
so-
Save me the time.
Godzilla. A guy named Koichi. He is a kamikaze pilot during World War II, towards the tail end of World War II, and he doesn't wanna do a kamikaze. So he lands his airplane on an island and pretends that it's faulty, and tries to dodge being a kamikaze in that way. But then Godzilla comes to the island and kills everybody. So then Koichi kills everyone except Koichi. So then Koichi returns back to Tokyo with massive survivor's guilt. But he manages to kind of like pair up with a young woman named Noriko, whose parents also died in the bombing of Tokyo, and also an orphaned baby named Akiko. So they kind of build a life together in this post-World War II situation. But then who shows up again but Godzilla, and now Godzilla is massive and he's also really mean. So he starts wrecking shit, and everybody kind of has to band together to figure out a way to stop Godzilla from wrecking shit.
So Dan and I have talked about, Godzilla, and I'm pretty sure kaiju films on another episode. I did grow up watching a few of them, and I was interested in Godzilla as a kid, but I didn't watch too many of the films. But for you, Yuta, obviously Godzilla is a Japanese icon. But what's your relationship to Godzilla? Were you into a lot of kaiju movies growing up at all, or not really?
I've been into kaiju movies so much. When I was like 5 or 6 years old, I watched almost all of the Toho kaiju series. And actually, I was more into Mothra rather than Godzilla.
Oh, Mothra. Okay.
Mothra.
Because I liked insects kind of things so much. Yeah,
see.
I had lots
I
of
liked
Mothra, he's the bad guy.
Yeah, when Mothra, yeah.
Oh, sorry, continue.
When a movie features Mothra, Godzilla usually appears as a bad guy, right?
Oh, really? So I thought Mothra usually the antagonist to Godzilla? Because Godzilla, to my knowledge, Godzilla is always fighting Mothra, because Mothra is always trying to blow up some part of Japan. But but yeah, my knowledge of kaiju movies is not that good. So is it usually the case that Mothra is the bad guy? Usually?
No, usually Mothra is the good guy, and Mothra tries to like
okay,
protect
yeah.
Japanese people from Godzilla or other monsters.
Okay. Yes. I'm completely wrong. That's very interesting because for the longest time, I thought Mothra was the bad guy. Yeah. Because I don't know, bugs are bugs are not the most pleasant looking thing. I like bugs as well, but they're usually depicted
Especially a moth.
as
Like
evil, especially a moth.
it's not the prettiest looking
Moth
bug.
lives matter, I suppose. What's your favorite Godzilla film, Yuta?
I think my favorite is Shin Godzilla, which was released in 2016, I think.
Okay. So that was
Yeah.
the one before
Yeah.
Godzilla Minus
Yeah.
One. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Hideaki Anno directed one. Yeah. I still haven't watched it yet. We were in Japan during the time it came out. There was a big buzz around it. I remember many of my Japanese friends asked me, like, have you seen it yet? And I'm like, nah.
Yeah, I think I didn't watch it because I was having a hard time finding an English sub version of it, like playing in
Yeah,
theaters.
there probably wouldn't be. Yeah.
But no, I heard it's alright.
Yeah.
I heard, it's definitely got a lot of commentary in it about the ineptitude of the government in Japan.
Yeah.
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 With Godzilla Minus One, I just want to hear what your guys' general opinion about that movie. Maybe like what do you, what's your general thoughts about Godzilla Minus One, Yuta?
Okay, my impression was like the story was good, but I rather think like it was more visually driven kind of movie rather than rather than driven by story. And I had lots of like shots which was so like impressive, and I can't forget after watching the movie.
Yeah, visually stunning. I guess that's why it did get the award.
It won. I was going to ask you, like, what's the scene that is the most memorable to you?
So there are some scenes I really liked, and I'd like to mention two. One is the moment when Godzilla shoots the Ray in the first time in the movie. The projection on the back rise up in sequence.
You see the radiation. Yeah.
And it return all together. Then it blow up.
Yeah, it blew up.
the Ray.
Was it
Yeah,
Ginza
yeah, yeah.
at the point? Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That's the iconic. That's definitely like a memorable scene because you've got the original Toho soundtrack that comes in. The dun, 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 dun. Yeah, it's very watching that in the cinema for me as well. Even though I'm not that attached to the Godzilla films, even I felt like, this is very classic. Like you can feel it in your bones when that soundtrack comes in. Yeah, it was a very cool scene. And what was the other scene that you wanted to
another
mention that was unforgettable?
Almost at the end of the movie, Godzilla was once sunk under the water, right? But he returns and tries to attack the ships once more. And in that scene, Godzilla is because of the water pressure, the body was so damaged severely. But still he tries to attack while twisting his body, and in that scene Godzilla looked very horrifying, of course, but at the same time painful and also divine.
There's a lot of shots in this film that are of Godzilla's eyes, and it's quite like you can see, even though he is a monster, there is you can see the anger and pain quite clearly in the expression of his eyes. So that's quite a visual feat that is hard to do, and it's very subtle as well. So I guess it's you have to do good special effects to bring that across. And it's such a simple thing, but it's just done really well. So again, well deserved.
It's not
Oscar.
easy to show that kind of emotion in an animal, let alone a completely fabricated animal, right?
Yeah.
And
That's true, yeah. But I mean, if you're gonna talk about showing emotion, let's briefly mention the $300 million smash hit fucking the Lion King live action remake, where everyone was saying, "Oh, the animals look lifeless," and it's that's how they're supposed to look. But it's like, man, just add some emotion to your. Anyway,
Just make it.
I don't want to bash Disney too much. What's your? But yeah, Dan, like, what do you think about like Godzilla Minus One? You and I watched this together, Dan, when you were in Melbourne.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. I mean, honestly, I'm not the hugest kaiju movie fan and Godzilla fan by extension. Like, I don't know, I've always found, the action feels really slow. I haven't really grown up with them. And, like, I always feel like the story kind of gets bogged down by human drama that I don't really care about. Like, I kind of just want to watch a big monster do some destruction when I'm watching a kaiju film, and oftentimes like it kind of balance with these human characters that are really bland. Like I'm probably talking more about the American Godzilla films than anything, because you have like Godzilla, and in those films, especially the recent ones, Godzilla looks amazing. I really like the design of the new American Godzilla. But then you've got fucking Aaron Taylor Johnson running around doing boring shit. Bryan Cranston just
Millie
dying
Bobby
in
Brown
the second
just
act.
doing whatever.
So
no one cares about the human characters in the American Godzilla film.
Right. So I think I found that aspect of Godzilla Minus One a lot stronger in general, because I mean it might be a bit more stripped down compared to its Japanese predecessors like Shin Godzilla, for example. But I feel like it's got a lot of heart in it. Like Koichi is dealing with a lot of emotion, and he's really conveying that in a lot of his scenes. Like I really had a lot of fun with Koichi's various meltdowns throughout the movie. I know it's probably not meant to be fun, but I mean, that coupled with the visually stunning scenes that Yuta was talking about, like. Obviously the visual effects are really good, and I do like the creature design of this Godzilla as well. He's a little bit more bottom heavy than the American version, but yeah, I think it works really well.
He's more like a tank. Actually, before I give my opinion about Godzilla Minus One, because I might have a controversial take, but I wanted to ask you, Yuta. We talked about the American Godzilla films. Have you seen any of them? And if you have, what's your opinion about them? What do you think about the American Godzilla films?
I kind of like them, especially what was it? The King of the Monsters. I really liked that movie because
that's the second
because
one.
Mothra was in it.
Mothra was in it.
Yeah. When Mothra appears behind the fort, do you remember that scene? The scene was so impressive, good, really good.
Yeah, they're not bad, but I feel like in those films, because the visual effects, they're trying to make it like this kind of hyper realistic version of these monsters. So it's often shot in darkness, whereas in Godzilla Minus One, I feel like it was very just refreshing to see Godzilla just out and about in the daytime. For most of the movie, if not all of the movie. Oh no, he has one scene.
Yeah, that's a pretty good observation. But, at the start, he's in darkness.
Yeah, but I think that's just to benefit that scene, because it's like an ominous introduction to this monster, right? But I don't think they're like trying to hide any of the visual effects behind darkness in Godzilla Minus One. Like they're quite happy to expose Godzilla in the daylight, and I just find that a lot like more fun to watch, even if even if you're kind of sacrificing a level of hyperrealism in doing that. I just think it's better when you can see what's happening.
And also, in terms of the difference between Japanese Godzilla and Hollywood Godzilla is like there's another difference, which is the Hollywood Godzilla is more like an animal, more like a creature, but Japanese Godzilla is more like a god. Does that make sense? So it moves so
that
slowly
does make sense. Yeah,
because it's not an animal; it's a god.
That's a very interesting take on it. Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying, and I definitely have seen some comments about because Godzilla or Gojira, as you may call it over there, it is a god, so it is like kind of something to be revered and feared in that sense. Where in the American versions, it is an animal, and it does cool fight scenes with other animals. Yeah.
I remember when the '98 Godzilla movie came out. I think someone from Toho was like, I think they started calling it Zilla because the god was taken out of it, right? Yeah.
Have you seen the 1998? When I was young, that was my favorite movie. When I was young, that was my favorite movie.
You've still got a toy,
have the
right?
toys
Somewhere.
of Godzilla. Yeah, I got the Godzilla 98 Godzilla toy. Yeah, I didn't because when that movie came out, it was critically panned. Like movie critics hated that movie, but I was not aware of any of this. I was just like, it's a big dinosaur destroying Los Angeles. I didn't care. I really enjoyed it when I was young. Maybe not as much today, but like,
I reckon it still holds up, probably. Don't watch it again, but...
I wanted to ask, we've mentioned that the human character arc in Godzilla Minus One is one of the main, things that are lauded about this movie. Like one of the big things that people say, like they fix the human, because the American ones don't have good human drama, but Minus One has a really compelling story about, post-traumatic stress and guilt and redemption. And it's quite nice. But with you, Yuta, as being, I guess you are the expert out of three of us on the Godzilla films. Are the Japanese Godzilla films quite emotional in that sense with the human characters?
I don't think so. The past Godzilla movies did not include so much of human dramas. So I think that's the point, that Godzilla Minus One has like stark contrast from previous movies, and I think it's also from Shin Godzilla, because in Shin Godzilla there is like it excluded almost all human dramas, so it didn't depict any of like anything about the protagonist, like how many family members he has, or like what kind of past he has, something like that.
Yeah.
As I said, I like Shin Godzilla so much, and it was a big hit in Japan too. So I think that the deep human drama in Godzilla Minus One is kind of an effort to like distinguish itself from Shin Godzilla, because Shin Godzilla was so good and so famous.
It's interesting because just hearing that, it's quite interesting, because a lot of people who may not know that much about Godzilla, or who are watching Godzilla from the West for the first time, they might be thinking, most of the Godzilla films like this, because it's Godzilla Minus One was a big hit in Japan, but it was relatively like a massive hit in the West. Like, so many people were talking about this movie. I think in Australia and the US, the cinema screenings were quite limited. Not many cinemas were showing them, but because of the popularity of this film, they had to extend the film's cinematic runtime. I remember like when I was trying to get tickets for when Dan was like, most of the sessions were sold out. Because there was a lot of people trying to watch this movie. And I actually watched this movie a few times. I watched this movie 3 times in the cinema. And I went with a friend, and there was actually a system error with the cinema. When me and my friend, we went in, people were in our seats, and then it was like double booked, and there was like a mistake. So it was like, the cinema person had to like fix it up, because the people wanted to watch this movie so much that there was this error. But why do you think, and this is just to you guys, like, why do you think this movie is so popular, like, in the West? Like, why is, because this is a pretty Japanese film.
I think most people in the West, myself included, have not really grown up on Godzilla movies. Certainly not as much as someone from Japan. So, yeah, to us, we don't have as much of an attachment to the Godzilla legacy, I think. So this is kind of like just a good balance of like Godzilla's there and we can recognize Godzilla and he looks really good. He's really mean, but he looks really good. But then there's also like the balance of the human element as well and like a nice story. So it's kind of almost like a gateway Godzilla movie in that way because it's not a complete like Godzilla film like Shin Godzilla might have been, but it's still got the same elements and the same themes, I guess, running through it. So I think that's probably why it's kind of it works well in the West, right? Because it kind of pleases both kinds of audiences, those that are big Godzilla fans and those that are maybe new to Godzilla or not as familiar with Godzilla.
Well, I think people like Western people they want something Japanese from Japanese movies. I think they don't want something global or international from like local movies. When they watch Japanese movies, they want some Japanese elements, and I think like. For example, a survivor of kamikaze attack is a theme, a motif only Japan only has, right? So I think that kind of thing is the reason of the success, Western success.
Western audiences can be like, look, there's Ginza. Oh, no, Ginza's gone. It's gone. It's been obliterated.
And also like what Japan looked like in Showa era, I think that is kind of like exotic for Western people.
It definitely looks cool. I mean, I can 100% completely agree with you on that when it comes to you don't want something global that comes from a local source. You know, you want to see something, you know, quintessentially Japanese. And this isn't just with Japanese films. It comes with any other film from any other country. It's like, it's why Parasite was so popular because it's like 100% Korean production, and Godzilla Minus One is a 100% like Japanese story. And also the cynical part of me says American blockbuster films were not very good last year. So when a good one comes, it's like, oh yeah, let's watch it. I mean, you know, no one watched the Marvels. I mean, that's just been getting fucking ripped apart by everyone on the West. Nobody watched that movie. So it is quite refreshing to see like a Japanese blockbuster made with a significantly lower budget.
$15 million somehow?
Yeah, $15 million. Jeez. Yeah. That's nothing compared to Indiana Jones, which cost like 250 million or something like that. Yeah. But I do want to spin this a little bit with the love of Godzilla. With my general thoughts of this film. Because I really enjoyed this movie. You know, I thought the visual effects were good. I quite like the acting in this movie. It's very exaggerated.
Melodramatic.
The Japanese style melodramatic acting. I quite enjoyed that. But I saw this film get like a lot of praise online amongst a few movie reviewers and people that I follow on YouTube. And when there's a certain excitement to this level about a film, there's often like a denouncement to other films that I quite enjoyed. You know, they're like saying, oh, this should be the best movie of last year. This is like everything about this movie is perfect. Which I had to disagree with, you know. There's a lot of things I enjoyed about this movie, but I think the thing was people were saying, why was Godzilla Minus One not the representative of the Japanese Best Picture film? For Japan, it was Perfect Days. And I remember I was watching someone say like, you know, oh, they really love Godzilla. And then they say like, oh, they always pick like the really pretentious movie to be the one that represents Japan. And then I was like, I had to really like disagree with that. And this movie was becoming so loved by everyone that I almost started to resent the movie a little bit, because I've seen this movie 3 times, and with each watch, I think this movie, it's good, but it's quite simple. And for me, I don't think I need to watch it a 4th time. I think everything about this movie is very, it's so clear in what it has to say that there's not much like else to dive into this movie for me. I think I've gotten everything that I've seen out from this movie.
It's not subtle. It's not a subtle film.
It's not subtle. It's not a subtle film. I think this movie, like, as well made that it is still just like another blockbuster, which for me, I don't think really changes anything in how I will evolve my movie taste. Because I love Japanese films and I love watching a lot of them. So I don't think this is even closest to being like the best Japanese movie of last year. I think there are a number of films that deserve that recognition a bit more.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. I thought like I might be in the minority. I'm not saying I don't like this movie. I really like the movie, but I think basically what I'm trying to say is this movie is just a little bit overrated. I think just a little bit overrated.
You're in the minority.
I think so.
Like,
yeah.
people like blockbusters, I think, and that's always been the case.
I'm a snobby. I'm a fucking snobby filmmaker.
Yeah,
but like,
and Oscars
you
have
can't
always been
call,
about
like,
the snobs,
yeah,
you know? That's what they're
yeah.
for. It's for snobby films. So it makes perfect sense that Perfect Days is there.
But like,
And Perfect Days
the
is
thing
great,
is, like, you
probably.
can't like just start bringing in people. It's like, oh, you know, this should have been like. There's a reason why snobby filmmakers, because you need films like Perfect Days to kind of push the envelope, because there's nothing like that film that exists much. But I think there are plenty of films like Godzilla out there. But yeah, I don't know. Just a little bit of a rant of mine. Just like it's you're welcome. Of course, love this movie. I definitely would support it. So more Japanese films will come to Australia like in a timely manner. But it's also like just maybe expand, like maybe don't dismiss the snobby like art house film, because there's a reason why Perfect Days was nominated for the Best Picture, Best International. It didn't win. Zone of Interest won, which I thought was really good as well. But like, there's a reason why a film like Perfect Days was picked, because it's a German production that has captured, I think for me, like Japanese life very well. You should watch it if you get a chance, Yuta. I'd be curious to hear your opinion one day, whether or not you think it's quite I think for me it is a pretty accurate and apt depiction of like Japanese life and philosophy and
So this is our Perfect
Anyway.
Days episode as well. We can mash it into.
So, I mean, we already talked about. I already talked
You
about
did,
it with
yeah.
Marcus. Yeah, I'll keep talking about it. Don't dismiss it. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's a good
But this
movie.
episode's not about it. It's about Godzilla, Tami. And I think this is a pretty
Yeah.
good Godzilla film. I mean, they'll
It
definitely...
is really good.
They'll definitely make a follow-up to this. And I'd watch another one. Like, to be fair, like, this is my favorite Godzilla film so far. You know,
Yeah, I think so.
So
Yeah.
it makes me more interested in watching other Godzilla films like Shin Godzilla. I might go back and watch that.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing, I reckon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts about Godzilla Minus One, Yuta?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I really liked that movie, as you too. Kind of agree with Toby in that like Godzilla Minus One was a good movie, but like I said in the first at the beginning, I think this movie is more like visually driven rather than like scenario or story driven. And by saying that, what I wanted to say, what I wanted to say was just like what Toby said. So this movie is like good in terms of VFX, but not the best in terms of like depicting Japanese. No, not like not best in terms of scenario. So so like what I want foreign people to do is to recognize this movie Godzilla Minus One as a starting point to watch like many other Japanese movies, and yeah, I want them to know like many of the more artistic kind of Japanese movies too.
Yeah, definitely.
There's some
yeah.
good ones.
No, definitely. Yeah, that's a good answer. Very good answer. I agree with that.
I'll put a link here. We've done a lot of
watch other
episodes on
shit.
Japanese stuff, so link over here.
Yeah, we have. Yeah,
All right, cool. Should we talk about Boy and the Heron then?
yeah. The Boy and the Heron.
Significantly
also
more
known
complex
as-
film.
yeah. But the Japanese title or the translated Japanese title is based off the novel How Do You Live, which was written by I forgot the author. I read this book like a year ago, Genzaburo Yoshino. So this is an adaptation of How Do You Live, but it is definitely done in a Studio Ghibli Miyazaki manner.
This film was billed as Miyazaki's last film before retirement. I understand before the Japanese release, there was almost no marketing for this film. Like you guys got a poster and maybe a couple of brief interviews here and there, but that's pretty much it. But I mean, like just a general synopsis says this movie is about a boy named Mahito, who is growing up in, is it post World War II or towards the end of World War II?
World War II is finished, I think.
Yeah, so
in
he's
this movie. Yeah, so post. Yeah,
he's growing up with his dad. His mother had previously passed away in a hospital fire. So Mahito is living with his dad and his stepmom. But then a heron comes along, starts talking to him, and spirits him off to a magical alternate world. And then Ghibli stuff happens. So
Ghibli stuff happens. But yeah, what's your general thought about this movie? Let's start with Yuta.
Yeah, I really like this movie too. And actually, I was like thinking about this movie through entire year last year because one of the reason is like Dan said because of the marketing. There was no like any
or lack
information,
thereof.
any big like promotion in advance. So I was always thinking, what kind of movie is this going to be? And after watching the movie was so difficult to understand by watching only once. So what kind of movie was this? I was always thinking. So both before and after.
that's how I feel after watching any Studio Ghibli film. I'm like, what did I just watch?
Movie, I was like always thinking about this movie. My brain was like so occupied by this movie. But like this difficulty, some people like criticize it's too difficult, saying it's too difficult. But for me, like this difficulty of this movie was so good because it makes me like
makes you think.
makes you think. Yeah. Actually, I watched it 4 times. Yeah.
Oh wow! And do you understand it after 4 times?
Well, kind of.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear what you think about it a bit more in that sense. I watched this movie twice because, like yourself, like I don't really know what it's about. I know what the novel it's about because when I first saw the trailer for this film, because I knew that this film was based off the novel, and the novel has no fantasy or magic whatsoever. The novel is much more simple. It is about, I don't even know if it's about a boy called Mahito, but it's about a boy who gets lessons from his uncle about growing up in post-war Japan. And there's a couple of scenes that happen in the movie that kind of nod to the novel, like the fight, which is like a pretty pivotal point in the book. So when I saw like, you know, a talking heron and all these parakeets and all this magical stuff, I'm like, yeah, this is nowhere near like the same vision as the novel. So I was also like very intrigued. And I also really like the idea of no marketing. I like the idea that Hayao Miyazaki
That's such a power move, huh?
a figurehead that he's like, I can drop a movie without any marketing and then you'll go and watch it because it's my name. That is a power move. It's so anti-Western way of marketing because it's like, oh, where's your socials? Where's this? Where we got to spend like 20% of the budget on marketing, you know? But like Miyazaki's like, nah, maybe I'll just say that I'm making it and then I won't talk about it for 3 years. Here's my movie. There you go. Go watch it.
Wondering what Miyazaki's intent was behind that. Because I know he is pretty like about, you know, he's all about being green and all that, leaving little environmental impact. So maybe there's like an element of like he doesn't want to add waste, but there's also probably on the artistic side he wants people to come into the film with like no preconceptions, I guess. Like similar to what you had, Tavi. Probably he wanted to avoid that if possible. And then it also gets like people like Yuta thinking about it even before the movie is released. So it's also, in a way, it's genius marketing in itself, right? Like having no marketing. So that's probably how he sold the idea to his investors. But the real Miyazaki is like,
I think so. Yeah,
I'm not doing marketing.
Maybe. I actually want to ask you, Yuta, about Hayao Miyazaki himself, because for me and probably a lot of people who like film, Miyazaki is, you know, the genius behind Studio Ghibli, the genius behind these really fantastic movies. But for me personally, I would never want to hang out with Miyazaki. He's very his demeanor is obviously what some people say like a grumpy old man who just like is very unhappy about everything. But I wonder what your take on Miyazaki is like, Yuta, like as a person. What do you think about him?
Well, like, I think you are almost right. As far as I can know from like by watching documentaries, which we can see in Japan. But like, I really like such kind of personality of his, and I think that's cool. Well, I don't want him as my own grandfather, but I really respect as a genius creator, and like I can kind of understand a genius creator has a personality, something like that.
It's usually the genius creators that are the assholes. Like, I respect so many artists who I really admire their work, but maybe personally wouldn't want to hang out with. Like, there's probably like some other people. It's like I might not like their work as much, but they probably seem like more pleasant people to hang out with. It's weird. It's like there's a certain level of friction that you need to create like great art. Because like on a film set or on any kind of, if everyone is just saying, oh, I love this, I love everything about it, there's nothing wrong with it, most of the time it ends up shit. You know, like you got to have that person to be like, nah, I don't like this, I have strong opinions about that. Because like Miyazaki, he's a pacifist. And he talks about how he doesn't like Lord of the Rings, which is like one of my favorite film trilogies. He's not a big fan of like American action movies, and I love like those movies. So of course, like if I hung out with Miyazaki, I'll be like, yeah, I love, like a Tarantino film. He'd
Yeah.
be like, nah, like I don't
Yeah.
want to talk to
It
you.
kind of
It's like,
reminds
okay,
me
well,
of
I'm sorry.
reminds me of Alan Moore, the artist behind Watchmen.
Yeah,
Alan Moore
yeah,
hates
Alan
everything
Moore,
and
yeah.
just wants to live in a cave. Hayao Miyazaki kind of, for me, his grumpiness has kind of ticked over into funny. Like he's got some good quotes.
Yeah.
I recommend you to read interviews of Miyazaki if there is anything available in English, because it's so interesting how he doesn't hesitate like dislike and express that he dislike something or some other works like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. He's just like, yeah. I think it takes someone who has like a very resolute like opinion to be able to like, yeah, I know what I
Just a
like and I know
stubborn
what I
old
don't
man.
like. Yeah, it's a stubborn old man. Going back to The Boy and the Heron, what do you think this movie is about? Because for my knowledge of the novel, it is a coming of age story, and it is supposed to be about a boy who is learning life lessons, which I think kind of comes through within the film. But and I've had this discussion with some other friends. It's like the thing about The Boy and the Heron is that it's not so much like as a strong message as it is like Hayao Miyazaki's greatest hits.
Okay.
Like The Boy and the Heron is like a mixture of everything that has made like a Studio Ghibli movie really popular. But like, I mean, Yuta, who has seen this movie 4 times now, do you think you understand what this movie is about more? Like, what's your interpretation now?
Okay. So one of the messages I could get was the denial to utopia,
Okay.
and which
Okay.
I think is kind of common in all of Miyazaki works. And by saying that, I want to mention the last scene where Mahito talks with the
Granduncle.
granduncle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the granduncle like wanted Mahito to succeed his own utopian world in the tower, but Mahito denies it, and Mahito chooses to go back to the world, which is so cruel. But he chooses to like live in the cruel world. So the Japanese original title is like you said, "How do you live?" And this doesn't mean like how you can live happily, or like. How you can live like a happy life, but it means like how you must live even in the cruel world. Something like
I see. Yeah. I think I get it with that sense. I actually want to talk to you about the title, but like I want to ask you, Dan. Like, I don't know, what's your, from your vague, because you only watched it once, and that's a few months ago now. Like, what do you reckon? What was your interpretation?
Yeah, I agree with Yuta. Definitely, there's a bit of anti-utopia, because like the grand uncle is, he's trying to balance his blocks, right, and make this kind of impossible task of making a perfect world. But even within that world, there are a lot of imbalances. Like there's starving pelicans, and there's fucking man-eating canary budgie things. It's definitely not a perfect world. Yeah,
the parakeets,
as much as he's trying to craft it, right? So there is that. But I think this is probably there's a level of autobiographicalness to this film as well. Like I think. It's based off this book, but I think it's also more based off Miyazaki's life, right? Like, I think Miyazaki is supposed to be Mahito, but he is also supposed to be the grand uncle. I think like the way Mahito is grown up, like I think Miyazaki also had a dad who was a weapons manufacturer, right? And also kind of grew up in that era. So there is that, and I think the idea of the grand uncle is that he's trying to pass on like this world that he's created to Mahito, or to anybody really that he thinks is worthy of it. But he's crafted this thing which is kind of like his animation empire as well. He's got this thing, he's ready to kind of give it up to somebody, but then he's also afraid that some parakeet king is going to knock it all down and destroy it. But I think it's also because I'm sure when he first started making this film, it was probably going to be his last film. Whether or not that's true now doesn't really change the fact that he's made this film like thinking that it's going to be his last film. So he's kind of trying to tell his own story. So I think one of the lasting messages is probably like how he himself kind of needs to let go as well, and know that even if it's destroyed, it's probably going to be fine. Like it's not going to be the end of the world. So yeah, I think it's kind of like about how he himself has to kind of change his moral code a little bit, and that's kind of like ties back to the original title, How Do You Live? It's like you have to evolve as well as a person to be able to survive in this world, even if things seem shit, which Miyazaki often says things are pretty shit. Like, yeah, you kind of just have to roll with it at a point.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, in our Suzume episode, I remember Yuta, you mentioned the English title didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
So when I saw the title for this film, The Boy and the Heron, which is the English title, but when you watch the movie, like the heron is not really a big part of the film at all. It is the kind of fantastical catalyst for Mahito to go into this new world. So I thought that the title didn't really make sense either, in this sense that like it's not really the heron at all. I almost would have preferred it if they had just called it like How Do You Live? Because as you were saying before, there's kind of a deeper meaning to that phrase. It's like, how do you live? Like you can interpret that title. And for me, I find that much more interesting. But my guess is in the Western sense, it's like, oh, how do you live doesn't connotate to a fantastical thing. How can we market that title? We just call it The Boy and the Heron. It sounds more like a fairy tale. But I wonder, like, what do you think about the English title of The Boy and the Heron? Like, do you think it's weird?
Yes. Well, I thought almost the same way as you did.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, if I had told you, Dan, it's like, oh yeah, this is a movie called How Do You Live? Like, what would you think? So, oh, it's just some like art house garbage movie or something like that. Like, what would you think?
Miyazaki's name would carry it, regardless of what it's called, really.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Boy and the Heron definitely plays well to somebody that has never heard of Miyazaki before, because, like you said, it's more fairy tale. You know, it's a bit more punchy as well, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's easier to market, but usually the English translate, like Spirited Away, makes sense because the whole point of that movie is Chihiro is being spirited away. Howl's Moving Castle is the original title. The Wind Rises, that sounds cool. I don't know if it was different in Japan. But yeah, I was just like, oh yeah, I wonder if it would have been cooler if they just left it as How Do You Live? But I don't know. That's just a little thoughts of mine. But what are your guys' like favorite part or aspect of this movie?
Well, for me, its animation was so good, obviously. And one of the scenes I remember is almost at the beginning of the movie. The heron, like, there was an animation where the heron, like, folding his wings, and whose movement was so realistic. And this movie was truly an animation in that like it's showing how how the animals or how the people in the world moves. This movie is showing this kind of thing, and in that sense, in that term, this is truly an animation.
Did you have a particular favorite character design?
Well, I like the design of the heron because it's so
Yeah,
funny.
I thought it was pretty
It's so
interesting.
interesting. Like
It was not what I expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. What about you, Dan? I think me and you, Dan, have a similar answer, but I'm gonna ask you what
I
you
mean,
did.
I just like the animation as well. I think my favorite scene was probably where he's gutting the fish. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, just really, really good hand-drawn animation going on. I hope that this movie kind of inspires Hollywood to go back to hand-drawn animation, maybe.
I
don't know
really
if
miss
that'll
that
happen,
so
but
much.
maybe. You never know. But yeah, my favorite character is probably the Parakeet King that I mentioned before. Well, the parakeets in general. Parakeets are pretty funny.
Yeah. I'm the same with you, Dan. I think you and I, we found the parakeet and the Parakeet King really funny, especially the bit where they're sneaking around and like knocking out other parakeets. I thought it was really funny. It's like there's something that is kind of dark about that scene.
Maybe it's the fact that they're trying to eat
because
these people.
They're trying to eat.
That's pretty dark.
Yeah. Actually, would you say that this is a kids' movie, Yuta?
Well, I see this is a kids movie that like kids have to struggle to understand. But I think it's still a kids movie. Also, it's difficult.
Yeah. Are the Studio Ghibli films amongst Japanese audience, are they considered like kids' films or just films?
Kids' films, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's the same way that like sometimes media has deeper messaging for adults, but like if you put enough pretty pictures and colors on the screen, kids can watch them as well. Like Inside Out is kind of like that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, because for me, when I watch like a Ghibli film, I don't see them as kids' movies because they're quite like, I know my perception of a kids' movie is something like an Illumination film, like Despicable Me or Minions. Even like Pixar movies, I would call more overtly kids movies, or like Frozen, something like that, because it's more about like the message being really obvious, and how much toys you can sell with some shit characters like Olaf from Frozen. But like whenever I watch like something, and not just like, Boy and the Heron can probably sell a lot of merchandise because there's a lot of really funny character designs. But I feel like that is not, whenever I watch a Ghibli film, I don't feel like a character design or a theme is in service of selling a product or trying to make something lighthearted and funny or to keep a kid entertained. I think it's done in a way that it is like almost literally for everyone, and it's quite complicated because sometimes I don't see a kid understanding, especially Boy and the Heron. I don't think a young kid would actually like this movie very much because it's a little bit stranger than some of his movies. Like, Totoro is probably easier for kids to watch. It may be even Spirited Away or Howl's Moving Castle, but I don't know. There's something about this movie that's like, it's really not. I really don't see this as a kid's
I think it's got
movie.
some darker imagery than the other ones, like Kiki's Delivery Service as well as Ponyo. Like, but this has got stuff the starving pelicans that I mentioned, and the one that like is really injured as well. There's a bit in the like birthing room that's like really fucking dark, where all the bandages are flying around.
So
like the themes aside, because the kids aren't if we can't understand the themes, then the kids aren't going to understand the themes as well, right? But like, I think the start of it is probably pretty accessible because there's quite a lot of color and stuff. I mean, like, yeah, who knows what kids like, really?
But he hits himself. He like beats his head with a rock
kids
until
don't care
it
about
bleeds.
that,
I was actually quite
think that-
surprised. I was just like, oh, gee, like, you know, this is it's pretty violent for like a perceived kids film. But like, I mean, you were saying before, Dan, about the I guess the Hollywood style animation. Diverting again a little bit, like I'm curious to like hear what do you think about the American 3D style animation, Yuta? Because for me personally, I don't like it very much. I'm kind of sick of looking at that art style. I think it's too kid friendly, but like I'm curious to hear like what you think about it.
Well, I actually like 3D CG as as a technology. I don't think it's a bad thing, but like usually, like Hollywood 3D CG animations are like too kind of childish. I think I say. Like the reason why I like Miyazaki movies so much is that, how do I say? Like Miyazaki he's always saying that I am making movies for kids, but like when he says movies for kids, it doesn't mean like movies easy enough for the children to understand, but it more means movies that help children to get mature. I think that kind of like stance is the reason why I like Miyazaki as a creator. So that is why I think The Boy and the Heron, even like despite its difficulty in plot and themes, it's still a kid movie. I think Miyazaki, as like judging from the personality or like thoughts of Miyazaki, I think he made this movie for the children.
Yeah. Well, the novel is a kid's, like, it is a novel written for children at the time. So I completely agree.
You know who doesn't like 3D animation? Miyazaki. But no, you're absolutely right, Yuta. I think like the beauty of these films is that they are colorful enough and entertaining enough for kids to watch them when they're quite young. But then as they get older, they watch them again and kind of explore the themes behind them and find another level of, enjoyment out of them, which is where I think like a lot of the audience is at now. People that have grown up on these Miyazaki films as kids, but then have gone back to rewatch them and found that there's a lot of depth in them as well. Something that you can't really find like a Western contemporary of in animation anyway.
Nobody's gonna. I mean, people still like Frozen, which I think is an extremely overrated film.
I guess the closest thing that we get in the West
bitter and
is
old.
The closest thing we get in the West is when you're like little and you watch a cartoon like The Simpsons, for example, and you're kind of like you enjoy it at a certain level, but then you rewatch the episodes as adults and you like see all these like hidden jokes in it. That's kind of like. That's probably the closest we can get in the West to this kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you have any like criticisms of Boy and the Heron? Because I think as much as I enjoyed the film, I think its complicatedness can be like a little bit inaccessible, which I actually think is a positive because I like artsy fartsy stuff. But I think for me, Mahito might be, he's quite stoic. Like he doesn't really emote that much, which is like sort of a point, but it's also, he kind of doesn't react to things as much as maybe he should have. Like even though a lot of like Ghibli films, it's a lot of people find themselves in these strange situations, but they kind of like, gambare, let's just get on with it and support each other kind of thing. I'm thinking of like in Ponyo and stuff like that. But I think in this movie, the plot moves quite fast. Like suddenly he's in this, new world. Suddenly there's like a woman riding a boat, and then suddenly there's like a fire magic woman, and it's like it starts to like move a bit too fast. I think that's probably like one of my like criticisms. But like, what do you guys have anything that you would like say about this film in that sense?
I almost agree. I basically agree with you, and I think that like many people say this movie is too complicated, but I think that's not right. And I say that this movie has no logic in it. Rather than like being
do you mean that it's too random?
Yeah. But I actually like this randomness in Miyazaki movies. So yeah. Like for example, like I said, I like the theme of denying utopia in the last like conversation between Mahito and the grand uncle. But like that kind of theme popped out so like suddenly, and yeah. So I was like, wait, was this story like about something like utopia
like
or something?
established.
Yeah. I was kind of like surprised by that. So yeah.
Maybe too many ideas in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas happening.
I don't know. I didn't really have trouble with it because, I feel like I feel the same way about a lot of Ghibli films. It's like a lot of random shit happens and you kind of just roll with it. Like the main characters kind of just roll with it at a point. I think, I thought it was pretty easy to watch in general. Like the music is amazing and the animation is amazing. So that kind of carries you through as well. And I think Mahito, he is stoic, but that's kind of his character as well. I think because there's so much other stuff going on, and he's got his guides as well, like the heron and the fire lady. So even though he is kind of like, it's almost like how Neo from the Matrix is kind of like a blank slate, but he's got all this other weird shit going on, so it's fine.
Yeah, but Mahito is not a really good fighter.
He does all right.
So he doesn't have the martial arts.
Yeah.
There's definitely like a bit, There's a plot point, and I was trying to like focus on this a bit more the second viewing, but I still like quite miss it. And it's a little bit of a spoiler, but you basically find out that there is, I guess this is the spoiler warning, but there's Mahito is kind of haunted by the death of his mother, like burning up in flames. And then by the end of the film, you find out that the fire lady is like his mother, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm like your mother, by the way." And like I remember when I was talking to you about this when I first watched it, Dan, it's like, "Oh yeah, there's probably a lot of clues, like like she's quite literally a fire lady." But because like the world itself is so fantastical, like I would still take that hint as, oh, she's just a lady with like magic fire powers. Like I wouldn't have picked that it was his mother. So I thought that was quite abrupt, and it didn't really
and
add
no one really
anything.
reacts to it either.
No one reacts to it. He's just like, oh, okay, like you're my mom, cool. I'm gonna go home now. And it's just like, yeah.
No, I can see where you're coming from there. It's a lot of the film is random, but like I said, I think it didn't really hurt the film for me in general.
How would you rank this amongst other Miyazaki, specifically Ghibli movies, like in your ranking? Like, would you put this quite high or low or in the middle? Like, what would you say?
Well, I put it quite high because I like, there is like a white Miyazaki and black Miyazaki, right? And I like the black part of Miyazaki. So I
Yeah.
like and
Yeah.
it shared some like emotions or themes with Princess Mononoke or The Wind Rises, both of which I really like. So maybe I can rank The Boy and Heron in the top three.
Yeah. That's pretty high. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd probably put this more mid, I think. I think I still like, I actually kind of like, I guess, the white Miyazaki more so, the light-hearted Miyazaki films. Like Totoro is my favorite Ghibli movie. I really like Kiki's Delivery Service. There's something very like nice about that film. Spirited Away is obviously really good. Howl's Moving Castle is probably like the balance of like white and dark Miyazaki. But yeah, like I think we're talking about the randomness of The Boy and the Heron, and I think when I was talking to a mate about this film, it's like, yeah, it's pretty much like there's definitely symbolism with a lot of the stuff that happens, but it's also like maybe a part of it is, this is just Hayao Miyazaki's greatest hits, masses of like animals like writhing together, little spirit floating things, like being shipped away to a different fantasy world. It's like every aspect of this movie you've seen in another Miyazaki film. So I don't think it adds anything new, which it doesn't have to. I mean, he's like 83 years old now.
But I think that also makes a lot of sense.
This will probably be his last film.
It makes a lot of sense if you consider it as his last
yeah.
film. Like he would want to do his greatest hits, right?
I guess so, yeah. And it got him an Oscar, and the Academy, the Japanese Film Academy, Best Picture, Best
You reckon
Animated
he was
Picture as
sleeping
well.
when his Oscar result was announced? He's probably sleeping, right? Probably.
Yeah, probably. He didn't. He
was either
he wasn't
sleeping or
there.
complaining
It's quite
about
funny
something.
because
Yeah.
I love the idea how like Miyazaki doesn't give a fuck about the Oscars. Like it's funny because you think
I can relate.
but like that movie could have easily lost out to Across the Spider-Verse 2, because Across the Spider-Verse 2 was way more popular than Boy and the Heron, and I think more critically acclaimed than The Boy and the Heron as well. But like, there's obviously some controversial takes on the production behind that movie.
They were probably
which we won't
crunched
talk
just
about
as much
here.
as the Japanese animation team for Boy and the Heron, in fairness. But I reckon I rank Boy and the Heron. I rank it in a sense that it's an interesting insight into Miyazaki's mind. I feel like it's slightly more personal than his other films, probably by design, because maybe it was supposed to be his last film. I mean, I think Ponyo is still my favorite because I like a lot of the water animation in that. But
Ponyo, that's
I
pretty
really
interesting.
Like Ponyo. So maybe I prefer the lighter Miyazaki stuff as well.
What's your favorite Miyazaki film then, Yuta?
My favorite, maybe Princess Mononoke is the best for me.
Oh, yeah.
Dark meat.
That's a good one. I remember watching Princess Mononoke for the first time, maybe like a few years ago, which is quite late, actually, if you think about how much I enjoy these films. But I remember the Ashtaka, I forgot the character's name, but he like shoots an arrow in the guy's head and then it explodes. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is a kid's movie? It's clearly not a kid's movie, but yeah, Princess Mononoke is, it's fantastic. But like, I guess for a time check, and before we go off into Miyazaki's greatest hits,
Can we wrap this up?
we probably should. We probably should wrap this one up.
Two good movies.
Any final thoughts on any lasting words on The Boy and the Heron? I guess we'll start with Yuta.
Okay. So Tavi said like this movie did not add so much something new to like previous Miyazaki films, and that I which I agree in terms of like the content of the movie, but I really like the marketing style of this movie, which was so new. And yeah,
That's definitely a new marketing. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
and it was
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
to
it
be
was
fair, that's pretty new.
like it was such a gorgeous experience to see a Miyazaki film without no like information in advance. So I wish this kind of marketing style will be adapted by other filmmakers.
You reckon
Yeah.
anyone else can get away with that?
Yeah, maybe we lost.
Who else could get away with that though?
Oh,
With just no marketing.
Marvel could back in the day, but not now. Marvel needs to take a break and not make any movies for like 3 or 4 years, and then come back with a really big like.
I reckon
event.
Tarantino
I
could
reckon
do
they
it
could
for
do
his
it.
final
Like,
film. I reckon Tarantino could definitely do it.
oh yeah, Tarantino. Yeah. It's interesting because like you talked about like the marketing. Maybe in the West we heard about it, but we might have missed out about it a little bit because it was released in Japan, so there was already like some buzz that you could read about it. So yeah, so the impact of that wasn't as felt, but it's still like that's pretty genius marketing. Yeah. Maybe Tarantino could do something like that.
I don't think anyone in the West would do it, just because there's so many jobs as well in marketing, and you're just like denying a lot of people work.
Yeah, there's so many people. Yeah.
Miyazaki doesn't care about that, but I feel like it wouldn't fly in the West somehow.
I hear the producer Suzuki Toshio. He like apologized lots of people involved in the past Miyazaki films for not doing much marketing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess I'll have to have a look at that. But you got anything else to say, Dan?
I mean, I think in general, I'm really glad these two films did win their respective Oscars. I think like I would love if the West kind of took some lessons from this, not just in the marketing side of things, but also just bring back hand-drawn animation. Maybe also on the visual effects side in terms of Godzilla, like realizing that you don't need to spend inordinate amounts of money to make your film look good. Like sometimes you just need to be a bit creative about it.
It's funny because like you hope that they would learn their lesson, but knowing like the mentality, they won't. They'll just double down on what they're doing now because that's what we like to do.
I think they're learning. I like judging from the
but
latest
still, like
Godzilla
no one's gonna
X
watch
Kong
that movie
trailer,
for the
it looks
human
like a lot
characters.
of it is set during the day.
Yeah, it's too. There's too much.
That's
when you try to make
weakness,
something that is that
Hopefully
broad
it's good.
appealing, you lose out a lot on the like the niche side of things. But anyway, I won't go on a talk about that.
I think the director of Godzilla, the American one, did have a chat to the director of Godzilla Minus One.
I think that's a really that's a really nice sentiment.
Of setting it
but maybe
in this
like
time period as well.
there's not as much creative
like,
freedom in the Hollywood version as well. I reckon he would have come up with that idea, and then they would have been like, "Nah, make it. Put Bryan Cranston in it." But anyway, let's let's wrap this up. So, thanks again for coming on
As
the show, Yuta.
Pilot,
I'm pretty sure we'll have you back on. I always find it very interesting to hear your take on films, especially as someone that is interested in movies as well. It's always cool to hear like the Japanese opinion, because as much as you and I both love movies, we'll have differing opinions, and that's cool. And Dan is just here just because he's part of the show and we have to have him here. But fucking Dan.
You can't get rid of me. I'll always be here, Tavi. No, thanks, Yuta.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy Oppenheimer
again. Oh yeah, of course. I was so happy to talk with you, and it's interesting to know like foreign people's opinion on Japanese films. So I'm glad to talk with you again.
Yeah, you have to forget we are the minority because I do watch a lot of Japanese movies. Most people will be like, "What's a Japanese movie?" or something like that. Yeah. But no, do you want to sign us off then, Dan?
Okay. Hey guys, what did you think of Godzilla Minus One and the Boy and the Heron? Do you think they deserve their Oscars? Let us know. You can get in touch with us at twoasianblokes@gmail.com. You can join our Facebook group to be part of the conversation, or you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at twoasianblokes to see what we're up to. Thank you again to Yuta for joining us today.
Thank you.
Until next time, guys, we'll see ya later.